Okay, good evening all. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can hear me clearly enough. I'm going to apologize in advance. I've had some internet connectivity issues today, so I apologize if I'm not as clear as I would be otherwise. Hopefully, as we proceed with the webinar this evening, we'll have more clarity in the session. I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening to present to you a subject that's near and dear to my heart, as well as my co-presenter's heart, Stephanie Vancouvering, Media Communications and PR in the Information Age. I want to, before we get started, as I have in the past, thank Nick Oshelski and Jenny and Lake Superior State University for the opportunity to bring you these professional development opportunities in a webinar delivery. Just as in past webinars, this one too is being recorded and it will be uploaded to Lake Superior State University's website for future access, for future reference. Again, I think all of you know me. You've heard my voice a few times now on these webinars, but again, my name is Angie Irwin and I have the privilege of working with Lake Superior State University in really helping deliver this webinar series to you. So this is the third of 5 in a series of webinars for Lake Superior State University administrators. We hope you've enjoyed, those of you that have participated in the past, we certainly hope you've enjoyed them to date and look forward to delivering 2 additional in the future. Before I pass the proverbial torch to Nick and then to my co-presenter Stephanie Vancouvering, I want to just offer up a couple of housekeeping comments as I have in the past. Number one, this is intended to be a little more interactive than the sessions in the past, so I'm going to strongly encourage you to use your hand icon should you have a response to a question, should you want to share any best practices relative to the subject, or should you just have something to share, something to say to the group. So again, you can use your hand icon for that, or you can ask any questions or provide any comments through the questions pane on your screen. I'll be monitoring both of those methods for participating throughout the next hour of the webinar session. Again, my colleague Stephanie Vancouvering, whom I'm going to, again, pass the torch to momentarily, will be delivering the majority of the content to you this evening. Stephanie comes with tremendous expertise in this area as well as charter schools in general, so very qualified to be presenting to you this evening. But before I pass the rest of the session to Stephanie, I'm going to unmute Nick and allow him to say a few words. Let me just share with you too, as in past sessions, you are all muted to maximize sound clarity, and again, I'll give you opportunities to speak and feel free to take advantage of the opportunities to say something through your hand icon or through your questions pane. So I'm going to pass it over to Nick for a few moments and then pass it over to Stephanie. Nick, are you there?
Angie.
You're welcome.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank all the participants for giving up some time this evening to listen to the webinar. As Angie indicated, the webinar will be on our website probably within 10 days. And if there's other topics that you would like to have us present in the webinar format, please email me those topics so we can look at future ones that will be coming up. Again, I'd like to thank you all, and you know, the communication and PR is very important. Being a past superintendent and director of a charter school, I know how important it is to be able to say the right thing at the right time, and to have a plan in place prior to anything occurring is always the first thing you should do. So I'm hoping Stephanie will be able to head us in that direction, and I'll turn it back over to Angie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick, very much. Steph, you can take it from here.
Okay. Can everyone hear me all right?
Well, I can certainly hear you.
All you muted people?
Yep, exactly. They're muted for right now until they have a question or we have something that we would like them to share.
All right. Well, if you ever cannot hear me, feel free to holler. So I want to introduce myself a little bit first and say thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you. I realize this is dinner hour. You're all trying to relax and unwind, so we're going to try to make this a little bit fun tonight. I have been working with PR for about 15, 20 years now, and with charter schools specifically for the last, well, since about 1998, 99, so quite a while. And what I have learned is that the world is changing faster than it ever has before from a public relations perspective. And so much of what I'm going to tell you tonight is going to make great common sense. But there are some aspects to it that are a little bit new, even at a reasonable age. I'm not going to reveal it all to you right now. I'm starting to feel a little like a dinosaur in the technology age. And so I want to make sure that you all are feeling as up to speed as you can, and that you're ready to take the reins and lead some of your own public relations campaigns, as well as respond to any issues that come up for your school and your community. Here's what I'm going to try to make it through tonight. The new rules, as I just alluded to, of marketing and public relations. We're going to talk about some easy and inexpensive ways to promote your organization, some ways to manage bad news, and at the end we'll talk a little bit about how to engage in some effective on-camera interviews. There are some tips and tricks that I'll pass along that are only whispered about by PR professionals, and we'll put those into your pocket so that if you're ever on camera, you're ready to roll. Angie, do you want to move the slide?
Yep, I did, Steph. There's a slight delay, so you should be seeing it soon.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit as we get started about the new rules. The days of writing a press release, putting it into your fax machine, and sending it out and being done with it are gone. This is good news and bad news. It's great news in the sense that you no longer have to wait for a newspaper outlet or a TV station to be interested in what you have to say and run your story. You now get to be your own publisher. You control your own message, and you get to control it directly. You're not relying on any other reporter or media outlet to translate it for you. You get to talk directly to the people you want to communicate with, which is fantastic news. It's a little bit more labor intensive, but with the right strategies in place, you can be ready. So, in the sense that you are your own publisher, you have the responsibility for guarding your own reputation. This is harder work than it sounds. With the internet, we have an incredibly long tail related to any organization or any individual. Most of us are savvy enough to be aware that when we put content onto our first personal Facebook pages and it gets shared with the world, we need to be sensitive about that. Many of us have Googled potential job applicants in order to find out a little bit more about their personal and professional histories. Well, that long tail, that long ability for people to track our histories and know a lot more about us as individuals and organizations, that applies to everything that we do. And it's very interesting for many of us to Google the organizations with which we work, because often what we think we know about ourselves is not what the public knows about us. So we do have the opportunity to get some instant feedback about how our messages are being received thanks to social media and Google and what we can find out about ourselves online. But that also can be a little bit of a surprise. And so we want to manage that long tail of internet and online interaction with our public very, very carefully, because there are some things that I'll show you later that will come back and kind of kick you in the rear from time to time. So you want to be ready to deal with it. In this new world of the information age, imagination is going to be far more important than money. We are no longer in the world where we all have to be Coca-Cola with multi-billion-dollar advertising budgets to put billboards and TV ads and clever Super Bowl commercials on. We can be very, very creative and really create a very impactful PR and media budget that connects us with our target audiences without ever having to spend too much money at all. And that also is fantastic news. It gives us an opportunity to think about who we are. This is also, I will caution, a very risky enterprise. For those of us who think we know PR, we all can make mistakes, and the internet and that long tail is there to track our every mistake. So we want to be very thoughtful and use our imaginations, but also converse with others in our organization and make sure that the things we think we're saying are using the voice that we intend to use and delivering the message, I guess I want to say, in a way that that makes sense and reaches our target audience. The other thing we want to be sure to do always is to follow up. There is nothing worse than establishing an online presence for yourself through a Facebook page or a website and then getting a comment from a customer and then failing to follow up on that comment. And I guess I want to pause here for a second before we move to the next slide and say that these are all things that are very doable within the framework of our own organizations. We are authentic organizations in this day and age, and that authenticity is a theme I'm going to come back to repeatedly during this presentation, because if the walk matches the talk, then we're in great shape. If our talk is saying that we're a consumer-friendly, we love students, for instance. Let's start there. We love kids. We want to make sure that kids are thriving and that parents know that they have a valuable partner in our school when they come to talk to us about their students and their achievement. And then if we don't return that parent's phone call when they contact us, if we fail to respond to a parent's email when there's a crisis, then the walk doesn't match the talk, and then we fail to be an authentic partner. We lose our credibility, and that credibility is going to be everything in this day and age. A parent is going to turn around and get online and say, when we post something about what a great partner we are on Facebook, then you can bet our comment thread is going to include lots of feedback about, oh, haha, they think they're so responsive and such a great partner, but they didn't return my phone call when I called to say my child had an extra need today. So that long tail again is coming through to show us as not being as authentic and as true to our message as we want to be. So we want to make sure that nobody can ever come back to our organizations and say, hey, you're all hat and no cattle. We want the cattle to be there. We want to make sure that we're following up on everything that we say we do as an organization. So this is something that if you're doing the job that you say you're doing, you're going to be great, and people are going to respect you, and your reputation will be guarded in the way that you want it to be. Okay, that's what I needed to say before we went to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when we think about how you're delivering your messages, there are 3 layers of control. I think you've probably seen this before, but just to review quickly, the inside things, that blue circle, is all of the stuff that's inside your control. And this is the stuff that traditionally we think of as being public relations. Press releases, printed materials, web content. Those are all things that you get a chance to tell your story without really being interrupted or without being waylaid into other areas. There are things that are within your influence. This is sort of the could go your way, might not go your way, and those are the public interactions, press interviews, and personal dialogues that you have with folks that are opinion leaders who think about you and talk about you in your community. And then there's the stuff that's right outside your control, what your opponent's saying, what you don't know, or what you can't fix. We all have an opportunity as charter leaders right now. I believe that the Detroit Free Press, many of us have been talking about how the Detroit Free Press is getting ready to run a series of articles that are very negative toward the charter community. And so that's out of our control, right? But we have opportunities through the things that are in the blue and yellow circles where we can really come back and show that the out-of-control stuff is out of control in a different sense, that they don't know what they're talking about at the Detroit Free Press, and that our schools are doing a great job for kids. So we'll talk about, as this presentation goes on, about how to make these 3 circles interact with each other, and ultimately you want that inside circle to be as big as it can possibly be so that the red dangerous circle on the periphery affects you very little, if at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go on to the, there we go.
Yep, there you go.
So telling our story. There is a pathway to great messaging. messaging, and it's very simple to remember. You do the what, so what, now what. You start with a piece of news that you want to get out there, a piece of messaging that's important to your organization. So you decide that you want to share it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out why your recipient should care. This is a very, very common mistake that we all make, and I'm always talking to my clients about not doing this. We decide, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I wrote a book, and it's a book that matters to me a great deal. I would like people to buy my book. So I am going to put out a press release and tell people I've written a book. So the natural question is, so what? Yeah, you're happy, but why should I be happy that you've written a book? What is your book going to matter in my life and have an impact on me? So instead of saying, I wrote a book, I need to reframe it. As a messenger, I need to not think about my great message. I need to put myself in my audience's shoes, and I need to think about why my audience should care about what I have to say. So that's part two. It really is, the best news in the world is meaningless if you don't frame it from a standpoint that's important to your audience. And then, now what? So you've gotten your audience to care. Now we need to give them an action step. We need to tell them what to do. So going back to my book example, I've written a book. I want to frame it in the standpoint of my audience lenses. It's a book for middle grade kids. It's really aimed at kids who come from disadvantaged households who really need to be creative and look for other support sources in their lives. So now what? I've gotten my audience maybe a little interested in the story I have to tell. So what am I asking them to do? You should never end a communication with an audience without giving them an action to take. Mm-hmm. And that simple needs to, that action and your message need to be simple and easy to understand. I recently participated in a series of focus groups, and people are, I guess I was really surprised. People are often not as with us as we give them credit for being. Frequently we think, oh well, everybody, you know, people care about school. They know what we're trying to communicate. Not so much. Many of the times, people that we're trying to communicate with, particularly when we are working with large numbers of disadvantaged kids, they have had bad experiences with school, and so they are really trying to, you know, get past some emotional baggage when they're listening to you. When you call them, they're reliving their own experience in the principal's office. They're reliving their own Fs that they got on a test, or maybe a dropout experience even. And so they're listening to you through a cloud, through water. And so your communication with them has to be simple, direct. It has to be delivered in a tone that is not at all unfriendly, that maybe acknowledges their own past experiences and tries to help them get past it for the benefit of their learner. So you have to, again, put yourself in your audience's shoes and be ready to tailor your messages accordingly. And that really is the next piece here. It needs to be recipient oriented. It's not what you want to say. It's what your audience really needs to hear. It needs to be delivered in everyday language and in a way that people are going to be ready to hear what you have to say. Is it coming?
Whoops, sorry, Steph. Yeah.
Oh, my message isn't getting received this evening, huh?
No, it is. It just
You didn't get my telepathic?
There we go. It should be there shortly.
Okay. All right. Terrific. All right. So we're going to play a little game here. I have a messaging exercise that I want you to read briefly. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going right in this message and what's going wrong. So I'll be quiet for a second and let you read. And when you have a thought about what you see going well here, raise your hand or get Angie to unmute you, or just type your comment in the question area, and we'll take a look at this together. Okay, has everybody had a chance to read it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Initial thoughts. What do we see that is good, bad, off-putting?
We'll give them a minute. As we're giving the group a minute to digest and raise their hand, Steph, I'll offer, I guess, in this messaging exercise, what struck me was that last paragraph, right? We've heard some in our community say we counsel all SWDs and ELLs, but that's not true. I think there's probably a way that could have been a little more quantified to make it seem more authentic, more realistic, more believable. You know, by saying that's just not true with no real substance attached to those statements doesn't really provide much authenticity, for lack of a better word, as you would say.
Yeah. Well, you know, and there is another problem with that statement. As you're talking about your school, does your audience know what an SWD is?
Right.
Or an ELL?
Or an ELL. Right, exactly. We've got a hand. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is that there is a school of thought, which I kind of go back and forth on depending on the client, that you don't ever repeat negative criticism.
Right.
That you respond to it obliquely without having to restate it. So go ahead.
Good. Yep. Thank you. Nick, do you have a thought to share? Yep.
Yes, just in the first sentence, they say a group of parents who wanted more for their kids, but they don't go and explain exactly what they actually wanted. What were they going to provide? What was their mission? What was their vision? You know, and I think that's kind of missing. I mean, if I'm reading about the Ricardo Montalban International Academy, I'd like to know what they're providing for my child that may be different than another academy or another public school might be offering.
Yeah, that is exactly right. This first paragraph is entirely bragging, basically.
Right.
And it's not given from the standpoint of the audience. If you want to bring kids into your school, you need to focus on those kids and what they need.
Yeah, very good.
Other thoughts?
Thank you, Nick, for your comments.
Yeah, there is a lot of lingo in here, jargon, basically.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this might be great language to start off a grant application from the state or something, but it's not good in terms of trying to address what your target audience, the students and families that you want to have come to your school, it's not going to address their needs.
Right.
So, all right, well, let's go on then and move into the next little section here. Okay, so here are the tools you have at your disposal. When you're telling your story, and this is, again, it should be an automatic thing that you do, and you should not think of public relations as a one-time activity. It is very much ongoing. Now, I frequently will have clients come to me and say, I want to do a brochure about my school, and let's not put any data in it because I don't want to ever have to update it again. It's going to be expensive to print that brochure, and I just don't want to have to think about that again. That's a big red flag right there that we've got a problem, excuse me, because brochures are great, they're fancy, they're nice, but that should not be how you're communicating with your audience primarily. The brochure should be a thing that you slide across the counter when a new family comes in and wants to talk to you. But, you know, I really caution against using one time. Like, we're going to do the website, we're going to publish it, and it's going to be on the internet, and we're not going to look at it again. What that is, that's turning into a cobweb, not a website. And so you need to be continually updating your materials, updating your blogs, putting out new video, reaching people in a way that is going to connect with them. I want to spend a minute on video. Video can be done actually very affordably, and for a lot of us it's the fastest, easiest way to reach our audience. Many of us have seen YouTube videos that have been put together by organizations or groups of organizations for a common purpose in our community, and those are very, very effective. They get your name out. If they go viral, oh bless you, that's going to be even better. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the like, those are all great ways. They do need to be maintained. It needs to be something that you're monitoring. If somebody puts a negative post or negative comment out there, you need to be ready to jump on that and respond to it. Flickr is also really interesting. That's a way of sharing photographs. And when you're working in your schools, those can be interesting ways for families to be able to go on and see what's happening in your building. So I tend to encourage people not to ignore that one. Traditional media, that's always going to be there. That's always going to be your print, your TV, your radio. My theory is that over the last 5 to 10 years, I really believe that these are becoming much, much less important. Many people don't even subscribe to print media anymore. A lot of the newspapers that we have in our communities are consolidating and being absorbed by big ones, and even some of the big ones are going away. TV and radio also, same thing. People are more and more getting their news through social media and through online surfing that they do. So while I don't encourage people to ignore it, particularly if you are living in a smaller community or a community where you're not seeing that same level of interest in the traditional outlets, it's generally not that big a deal. I think you get a lot more bang for your buck going through social media and some online tools instead. Okay, getting your message out. Internet, again, your new word of mouth. This is a way that you can connect and join with your audience directly. You want to make sure that the content that you post online is relevant. And we'll talk a little bit about how to make sure that it is. There have been some very high-profile mistakes with content that was not relevant. But I want to talk a little bit here. I saw a recent blunder here in my own home school district that I think is important for you to know about. I live in DeWitt, and this is an example of where the social media and the content kind of got out of control. This happened just a few weeks ago. We had a parent that had a concern because her child came home from school, a high school student, and was reading a book about zombies, and I can't remember the name of it, but at the beginning of the book, she opened up the book out of his backpack, and it had a couple of swear words in it, and it had some sexual content, and the parent was bothered by this and asked the child where they got the book, and the book said, well, it's being taught at school. So the parent got in touch with the superintendent, who said, well, we have a process for you know, parent feedback on books, and here's a form you can fill out, and so fill that form out and we'll take a look at it. So the parent felt dissatisfied with the response that she got from the superintendent, so she went ahead and called the local newspaper, the Lansing State Journal. They ran an op-ed piece from the parent, and they offered the school an opportunity to provide a rebuttal piece, and darned if that school didn't turn them down. And so that was a case where the school completely failed to get its message out. So the Lansing State Journal was not content. They wanted a rebuttal piece, so they went to Michigan State University, which replied with one of the articles. It was a PhD student, and the university responded with a, well, pedagogically speaking, we think this and that and the other thing, and basically indicated that as teachers, they knew better, and so this book deserved to be taught. Which I'm sure was not the message that DeWitt Public Schools would have liked to have shared. And so this is a classic example of if you don't lead with your message, you're going to end up following. And that's exactly what's happened. The issue has gone, it's all the talk of the town I live in. It's been on the local TV station. The parent has got a big following behind her, and that's going to come back and bite them in the rear. So I really encourage you that if you know of a conversation that's starting to take shape, A, couple mistakes that the superintendent made was A, not following up with that parent directly and hearing the concern instead of brushing it off. That would have been a great time to deal with it and nip the issue in the bud with a, hey, yeah, we do teach this book. We know it's controversial, but perhaps they offer an alternative, or perhaps they provide some time for that parent to be able to really be heard and feel like they were listened to. That's that authenticity piece I was talking about at the beginning of it. And then failing to respond when it hit the media, and then failing to respond when it became a community conversation. Now that issue's gone and out of control. And that, again, will be part of that district's long tail online. Mm-hmm. So the other thing, point 2 here, is show and don't tell. Too often, and as a writer, I do this all the time myself, we get trapped in the idea that we're going to put together a printed piece, we're going to do an annual report, we're going to put together a video, and we're going to tell you who we are and what we have to offer. That's great, and those things have value, but we need to show families and students who we are. We need to make sure that, again, our walk matches our talk, and that we are really giving opportunities for families to see who we are by giving them a first-hand look. We want to bring people to your campus. Don't overlook the importance of those community nights that you have to offer. If you are in a community where public venues, spaces for people to meet and gather are limited, offer your space for that purpose. Make it free. Get people there so that they know you. They're walking their hallways. They're seeing examples of your students' work. That's incredibly powerful, and you want to make sure that you are offering those opportunities as much as possible.
Steph,
and don't forget virtual options. Yeah.
Sure. May I interrupt you for just a moment? A question came in, and this person is asking, as a principal, if I respond no comment or provide a number for a reporter to call, is this seen as a bad move? So can you respond to that before we get more deeply into this page
Sure.
in the presentation?
Yeah. It can be. I always advise people not to say no comment if you can possibly avoid it. Now, I know that there are often times when litigation becomes an issue and you feel like, oh my gosh, my lawyer has told me that I got to zip it. That is a concern, but you never just say no comment and hang up the phone. You always try to frame it. And I used to work for the State Treasury Department years ago, and when it comes to tax issues, people would call up and say, oh, I hear so-and-so hasn't paid their taxes. Well, as hopefully tax-paying citizens of the state, we all know that that's information protected. We don't want that out. So I would joke with the reporter. I could say something like, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. Or I would, and we'd laugh about it together because the reporters, they know how this goes. And so when I was on the board of a local charter school, and we actually terminated the contract of the superintendent, and I had some restraints on what I could and couldn't say, I would say, listen, you know, this is a really sensitive human resources issue, and I don't want to in any way share things that my lawyers have advised me that I can't. But what I can tell you is that we are committed to making sure that all students have access to quality adults in their lives. And, you know, I don't even remember, that's probably not the best way to say it, but you can frame things without saying things that are bad. If you just say no comment and hang up, then the other side, of whatever issue you're on, then they control all of the ink in the article that is going to be written. And you don't have an opportunity to share anything. You look not only not right in terms of your credibility, but you also look unresponsive. And on this note, I'm glad you brought this up, because another thing that's really important is being timely. And this happens a lot with some of my bigger organizational clients. So let's say that we get a FOIA request from somebody. Mary T. Wood, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she's a common charter critic, and she always submits FOIA requests to the state and to authorizers, and sometimes to schools themselves, I believe. And so a FOIA request comes in, everybody freaks out, oh my gosh, Mary T. Wood is at it again, what are we going to do? So then the gears start going, and the lawyer has to talk to the press person, and the press person has to talk to the CEO, and the CEO has to talk to the legislative liaison, and everybody starts having meetings. Well, these meetings, as we all know, can take time. By the time the number and volume and quantity of meetings and the lawyers have billed and done all their stuff, your press person is probably having a heart attack, because you never want to let a day go by, or let too many days go by. But a rule of thumb is if you get a call from a reporter, you call them back the same day. These folks are living on deadline, and if you don't get back to them in a timely manner, they're going to run their article without you, and you're not going to have a chance to get your message out. So we'll talk in a minute about how you can control your message, even if you're hamstrung in terms of what you can say. But I'm really glad that you raised that point. And if others of you, if you have questions as we go through this, please feel free to interrupt me. I can talk all night, and I need to be stopped sometimes. So let me start on the third bullet here. I want to encourage you, everybody should have a street team. And by street team, I mean you need to have people in your community that are going to stick up for you when you can't stick up for yourself. So let's say you've got a really bad news story. And let's use the Free Press, the articles that are coming up right now. We should all be building street teams right now because we know that this really bad piece is coming. They're going to attack financial and governance practices of charter schools. So let's have some folks that are ready to stick up for us so that when the article runs, we're not just saying, hey, we're not so bad. That looks kind of weak, right? So let's get some folks that say, hey, no, you know, ABC Charter School is really adding some major value in our community, and their test scores are second to none, and we don't appreciate you, Detroit Free Press, taking such a limited perspective on what these schools have to offer. So you want to have some folks that are allies, that you can activate them when you need them to be on your team. So give that some thought. Figure out who you can recruit. Okay, here's some really powerful examples, and some of them are actually kind of fun. So I want to share a little bit about people that did things wrong. The first one is not failing to respond. This is kind of what we talked about a second ago. If you look at the guy with the guitar in his hand, this is a hilarious story, and I hope you all Google it. This guy is in a band, and he flew United Airlines someplace, and they broke his guitar, and he and his band members were watching United like fling these guitar cases around on the baggage handling area from their seats on the airplane. And so when they landed, the guy opened his guitar case, and sure enough, his guitar was broken. So he called United Airlines, and he wanted some help, and United didn't respond. It didn't respond. They kept referring him to other people and giving him the runaround. And so finally, he wrote a song about it. And the song is called United Breaks Guitars. It's actually very catchy. And if you go online, it went viral. And United actually lost thousands and thousands of dollars as a result of their failure to address this guy's simple issue. He even mentions vice president and employees by name. So I think that this is a pretty profound example of where the walk needed to match the talk, and how people will be very creative in getting back at you if you don't do what they need you to do. Netflix, this is another good one. There was a period in 2011 where Netflix decided they were going to split off their streaming video and their DVD services, and their customer base was furious. They were so unhappy because it was going to end up raising their costs. And so they started writing to Netflix. They were all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. They were really this huge outcry that don't do this, please listen to us, your customers. And Netflix took 2 months to respond. And so it ended up costing them a tremendous amount of money as well. And I think if you Google PR crisis, this is one of the first ones that will come up. So again, don't fail to respond or your message will get away from you and you'll have a devil of a time getting it back. So another one, don't be insensitive. The tweet here below from Kenneth Cole, millions are in uproar in Cairo. Rumor is they heard our new spring collection is now available. Now, come on, really? I mean, this is democracy and people dying and, you know, stuff on fire, and this is how they respond. This is another one, just, ooh, tin ear. And then the picture of the Concordia, the ship, as it turned over, this is another one that was really insensitive. The accident had just happened, and the cruise line actually shut down all of its social media channels. And they said, you know, oop, got a crisis on our hands. We're not going to be able to communicate with you for a while, and just shut it off. And so all of these people, you know, media, news outlets, families that were interested in knowing how to connect and what was going on, they all had a complete blackout. Definitely not the right thing to do. So if, God forbid, somebody brings a gun to school in your building, definitely, you know, don't send a message. Somebody brought a gun to school, we'll see you later. You know, that's the time to communicate. That's the time to let everybody know, so that everybody feels that they have information. As a parent of school-age children myself, if I feel like I have knowledge, I feel empowered, I feel like I know what's next, and I'm going to give my schools a pass where I might not otherwise.
Steph, this is probably a good time to ask this question. So what is and this is, I understand this is probably another topic for another presentation, but just quickly, communications plans, crisis management plans. We're not talking about this in this presentation, but what's your general feeling on the value of those?
Of crisis, having an agenda just in case?
Right, yep.
I definitely think that it's useful. At minimum, you need to have a chain of command. And okay, so let's go back to the gun in school example. Mm-hmm. You need to know who's going to be your point person with the media. It needs to be somebody who's going to be prepared that that's all they're going to be doing, because you're going to have folks, your board's going to be involved, you're going to have people calling, you're going to have parents calling. You need to be ready. You need to at least have identified who's going to do your talking. And you need to have figured out how you're going to get your messages in there. So, for instance, the last thing you want to have, this is another bad example, so-and-so brought a gun to school, we're sending everybody home. We don't know what to do. Okay, that's really obviously bad, and that's an extreme example. I know nobody would say that here. But you've said two things with that message. First of all, you're not safe, you have an emergency, and number two, you don't know what to do to keep kids safe. And so when a reporter calls, the story is now suddenly going to be you're completely flat-footed. I'm going to give you another example from my community. In December, we had that massive ice storm, and the Lansing Board of Water and Light, our local utility, had, you know, tens of thousands of customers without power, and they completely did not communicate with them. And so it was 2 weeks, sometimes longer, before these folks had their power restored. There has been such an amazing hue and cry. They're still having sessions, meetings. I think there's a guy who is probably going to lose his job, and if he doesn't, he will be darn lucky, because they didn't have a way to communicate. And their answer was, hey, you know, we're not consumers. We don't have that kind of bandwidth. We just can't handle this kind of crisis. So bad news, and totally not the messaging that the community wants to hear. So now there's going to be a referendum, most likely, on how the board is made up, and it's definitely a big deal. So if you can have a communications plan, at least get yourself a step ahead of the game, so when the power goes out, you're not standing there wondering what to do next.
And Steph, if I could add too, so for those of you that are on the line, in one of my roles at CMU at the Center for Charter Schools, I was the External Relations Director. So not only did I work with CMU and the Center in our external relations efforts, but I also worked with schools. And we had an issue when I was at CMU with a child who brought a gun to school, and the gun went off and ended up shooting, or ended up hitting a child in the leg. So the school had called me immediately, and whether this was right or wrong, so Steph, you can comment to this, my position for them was get out in front of it, because you know the media is going to get a hold of this quickly, and this was years ago, so this was before the online capabilities, but get out in front of it. acknowledge what had transpired, acknowledge the fact that you're working through the details, and that as events unfold, you will keep the media engaged in the conversation. So again, not sure if that was the right advice. I think it worked okay for the school, but just in terms of getting out in front of that kind of bad news, what is your recommendation on that, Steph?
I think it was absolutely the right advice. You always want to be sharing your own news. You don't want anybody to be coming back and having to ask you. So if it was exactly right to say that the news needs to come from you. You need to communicate that you're on top of it, that you have a plan, and that you're putting that plan into action, because that's how people will come to trust you. If you are silent or you don't say anything and it comes from somebody else, then people are wondering why it didn't come from you. So like we all do in our day-to-day lives, we all have a boss. We assume that if something bad is going to happen to us with our job, we want to hear it from our boss first, rather than through the corporate grapevine or through the company grapevine. And so the same applies with everybody else. When you're dealing with the media, always be upfront. Own your mistakes if you've made a mistake, and we all do. And bad things happen to good people in our work, and so we need to be ready to own those errors too, and get out in front of them. So perfect advice.
Good, good. And then just another question came in, Steph, and this is really surrounding the Free Press article that we're all anticipating, but I think just, generally managing internally how to deal with any upcoming, maybe not so positive newspaper articles. So the question is, I'm a little concerned about the upcoming article. What should I tell my staff? So what should I be telling my staff, not only about the context of the article, but what should I be telling my staff in terms of how to help manage it? So this probably gets a little bit to that street team comment and street team strategy.
Yeah. With your staff and with your supporters and your parents. I think a critical one here is also communicating with parents, because we don't know what's going to happen with this piece, but we do know, I think with some certainty, that it is going to focus on governance and management. So that's tremendously good news. That's something that the Detroit Free Press has actually done us a huge favor, because we don't exist to govern ourselves and spend money, right? We exist to educate kids. And the Detroit Free Press has said in some of their interviews with people they're talking to, we're not interested in student performance, we only want to know how you're being managed. Well, you're kidding, right? I mean, this is a school. You're not interested in how we're delivering results for kids. So I would say that in talking to your staff and to your families, that you say, and I probably would wait a little bit on talking to parents and families, but I would be ready. And I would say to my staff, look, we know that this negative article is going to be coming. We don't know how it's going to be received. We don't know if the legislature is going to get a hold of it and decide that they need to change some major aspect of law. We hope that's not the case, because what matters most is student achievement. And what we care about here is student achievement. The examples that these are, unless your school, and I don't think I've heard anything about any Lake Superior State schools being targeted for this. I think they're looking at some pretty high-profile examples where things have legally gone wrong in isolated instances. And again, bad things happen to well-intended people. We all believe that we're doing the right things, and if mistakes are made, we deal with them and we move on. And in the cases that I know that the Free Press is looking at, those situations have been dealt with and we're moving on. We've long since moved on in some cases. I think some of the examples they're looking at are a decade old. So, number one, you separate yourself from the problem that's happened, because it's probably stuff that doesn't even remotely affect you, either from your school or from your authorizer. And second of all, you focus on what you're doing in your community to make a difference for kids. You're delivering positive curriculum on a day-to-day basis. You're producing quality teaching and learning. Your kids are doing well on standardized tests. They're growing quickly according to the measures that you're using. They have access to tremendous extracurricular activities, and we're getting the results that we need to here. So, you know, we would encourage the Free Press to look at all aspects of what is happening in a school before they make a judgment, and they ought to really look at core mission first. So I'd be getting your teachers ready to respond, and then I might even sit down and think through what your own messaging would be. And again, I want to get to this before we hang up. How to think through and react with the messaging that you need to, so that you can tell your story at the same time that you're responding to a bad story someplace else. So Angie, actually, if we could click through this next slide, I want to get to some of that messaging stuff, because it really is important. Okay, I will say just very quickly, yeah, you don't want to get combative. You need to edit carefully. There are examples. You're a school. I mean, if you put out a communication that has typos in it, it really does reflect poorly on you, so do proofread well. And yeah, let's go on to the next one. Okay. So here we go. We're going to criticize facts, not opinions. If you're sharing your opinion, which I hope that we all do when this Free Press thing comes out, you're going to want to have maybe some letters to the editor. You're going to want to have an op-ed or something that you can run just locally. You don't need to write to the Free Press if you don't want to, though you can. I mean, most of these major news outlets have opportunities underneath the story. If you scroll down, you can often see people sharing their own comments, and those are great places to weigh in, because people watch those comments. Opinion leaders, lawmakers, they all watch those comments. And if the Free Press gets an overwhelming backlash, you can bet that that's going to be the news story, not what they originally wrote. But you don't want to get personal. You don't want to criticize somebody for believing differently than you do, right? Because it's the whole, you know, free society thing. But you can catch them on facts that are incorrect. And you want to do that. You want to talk about the facts of what are going on in a story or in the setting. You want to do your homework to make sure that your facts are accurate. You don't want to get out in front on something and then find out that you were wrong. If you write a letter to the editor, you don't want to cover more than 1 or 2 points. People really can't handle much more than that. You want to be brief, and you want to decide, what is it that I need my audience to take away, and then hit it. You want to be concise. You want to watch your tone. You don't want to get personal or angry or be perceived as such. You want to be professional, scholarly even, because you're a school, and that's tremendous. PR people have rankings of how they judge people, who's most believable and who is least believable. I think we can all agree that most people probably aren't going to take a ton of personal advice from a used car salesman or from a fat cat lobby type. Those people have very low credibility. But the time and again, the top people who are top credible, your doctor, clergy, and a university and a school. So schools and universities have tremendous amounts of credibility. Don't waste that. Keep it, prize it, cherish it, and make yourself, avail yourself of it. Coordinate your efforts. You don't want to have 150 letters to the editor hit on all the same day. You want to spread them out over a week or two. So, you know, Angie and I are going to send our letters today. Nick and Maggie, you're going to send your letters next week. And you try to keep that long tail working with you, and be persistent. Media people certainly are persistent. You have a right to be persistent in your dealings with them. Okay, so this next slide is going to tell you how to be a master messenger, and I think this is kind of getting back to that question we had a few minutes ago. You want to set a goal for every appearance. Even if you're going to be put on the hot seat, you need to have a goal, and your whole goal, I mean, I certainly, in my past PR dealings, my whole goal has been like not to like self-immolate or light on fire during the presentation. If that's your goal, awesome, go with that goal. but you know, you want to be left. Sometimes your goal can be, I want people to understand that I have a side to this story too, and maybe be interested in what my side might be. You want maybe to be prepared not to be, you know, embarrass yourself. You want to be poised. You want to look nice. Sometimes that can be your goal. But ideally, those aren't your goals. Ideally, your goals are getting some interesting, intriguing information about your organization out, conveying that your organization does a good job and that you're ready for these kind of bad news stories. That can be a great goal. You want to come prepared and you want to be camera ready. Word to the wise, don't wear white. White looks bad on camera. It will make you look orange or blue, and it doesn't work well. Don't wear small patterns. It sounds silly, but you really want to think about these things because people are looking at you, and how you look is as important as what you say. And that's a big point here. Watch your body language. Nothing gives you away faster than blinking too much or looking shifty. Look directly at the camera. Speak slowly. This is one I struggle with all the time. If I have a lot to say, and you've heard me do it on this call, I have a lot to say, and so I tend to blah all at once. And so you want to speak slowly. You want to be thoughtful and deliberative so people know that you're really thinking about what you're saying. You want to stay on track with your message. This is crucial. Don't let yourself be waylaid. This is the kind of when did you stop beating your wife type of question. Don't fall for these things. Say what you want to say. Some people believe, and legislators are famous for doing this, don't answer the question they ask. Answer the question that you want to answer. Mm-hmm. This can backfire on people. I think we saw Mitt Romney do this a little bit too much, where he would, you know, in those debates where Jim Lehrer says, oh, you know, why do you believe that poor people shouldn't have food stamps? And then Mitt Romney would say, but let's talk about NASA. You know, I voted for the man, but, you know, it was poor on his part. There are ways, however, of being able to bridge, and I've given you examples in this PowerPoint. Before we get off this topic, let me just add, or let me put this in perspective for you. It's important to remember this. We hear a lot, what is the one that's on the radio? People saying, look, you need to understand this. Look, it's a kind of aggressive, but it's not too aggressive, and people feel really good about saying it. It's getting a little overused, and it's getting, I mean, Barack Obama with, let me be clear, let me be clear. You know, you still want to be, you do want to be clear, and you want to preface it, and using these smart bridge statements can give you an opportunity to do that. You want to have a takeaway. It kind of goes back to that first bullet about setting a goal. What do I want people to think about? Maybe your goal can be that, you know, kids aren't bringing guns every day, but we were ready to deal with this one, and we're ready to deal with anything that happens in our building. So if you have those takeaways in your head, then every answer can get framed in the light of those takeaways. So going back to my example of firing the superintendent and not being able to comment, I could say, listen, we did have a situation where we had to let Mr. X go, but we did it because we believe so firmly in making sure that every kid has access to a quality experience here. And we decided, and Mr. X amicably agreed with us, that our kids can be better served if we go in a slightly different direction. And so I can't comment on all the particulars, but let me just say that it was a mutual parting the ways, or whatever. You know, you frame it, you always have that message sort of either hinted at or said overtly when you're giving a message to the media. And then you want to make sure that you're tracking and learning from your results. None of us likes to watch ourselves on camera, but we all have to do it, so that we can learn what we did wrong. I watch myself online and realize I look down all the time. Well, that makes me look unreliable. So now I remember that, and I learn and make sure to meet the camera head on. Oh, here's another thing, little cheat for you. If this will be the one that you'll all remember. If you get stuck, often you can work with a reporter. You can start with the camera. If the camera's on you, unless you're live, you can always say, wait, can I start that again? And they'll be fine. If the reporter's mad at you, they may not seem that way, but you can generally, they'll give you a chance to reframe or start. If, however, they don't give you that chance, there's a surefire way to be able to start again, and that is to have a sudden coughing fit. or sneeze, because then the tape was spoiled. They can't use tape of you hacking your lung up. They need you to be clear. So you can cough and then say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, excuse me, can I start that again? And they'll always say yes. So if nothing else I've given you today, that's the big
great
PR
strategy. Yeah, absolutely.
So knowing how to deliver bad news, be timely. Don't let it get out ahead of you. Be honest. Don't waste your credibility trying to shade something, and get to the point. Describe what you're going to do to fix the problem you've just identified. And then, again, see the news. Always flip yourself around. Don't just look at things from your own perspective. Look at things through the eyes of your stakeholders and use messages that you know are going to resonate and be meaningful with them. Take your hit if you have to take a hit. A kid got shot in my school today, and we are really upset about this. Here's what we're doing to fix this and make sure that it never happens again, and here's how we're going to make things right for the victim and her family. Don't play the blame game. Don't say, well, you know, we should have had more money so that we could hire police officers and have them at the door every morning. If we had more money, we'd be fine. Don't ever do that. Own it.
Steph, could I just add something there too?
Yeah.
As I mentioned to all of you in one of my prior roles at CMU when we were talking about the shooting, I knew about that because the person, the school leader, happened to know that I was in that external relations position at the charter schools office, so reached out to me. I would say to you, as you are confronted with bad news or as potentially controversial, negative things happen at the school, to let your authorizer know, because it is very likely that any news reporter or anyone who's interested in the story, who knows that you are a charter school, who knows that you might have an authorizer, will likely be calling your authorizer next. So just be sure to keep your authorizer in the loop relative to any of these bad news or not so positive news stories.
That's great advice, and let me piggyback on that and say that you also can get some great resources from your authorizer. That, you know, if you are in a crisis and you need, you know, legal advice or help or PR advice, you will get good tips from an authorizer who will at least give you you know, the framework to start thinking about what's going on. I did have some video today, but I think we're out of time, and so what I might do is put it up on YouTube. I have a fun exercise of things that have gone wrong. I've got people like Prince Charles and Madeleine Albright being interviewed and just completely tanking. So it can be fun to look at, and so I might throw it up. It's just good for a grin, maybe. Make you feel very proficient, and I know you all are, and that's the thing. That's the beauty of the way PR is right now, because we all are doing it all day long, every day. We all are PR experts because we're interacting and we're selling ourselves and we're showing ourselves to be who we are. So what you want to do is just maybe think about it a little bit more deliberately, and if there's no other takeaway you take from me today other than cough up a lung if your media interview is going wrong, and definitely be who you are. Be who you are and be ready to show who you are to those around you. And as long as you're authentic in your communications and as long as you're planning and being upfront with the folks you're dealing with, you're going to be successful. And you already are.
Good.
So if you weren't, I would have already read about you and be using you as an example in my presentation.
Thank you, Steph. Let me just ask Nick too. I'll unmute him here shortly, but with the videos that we've run out of time or just, again, the technical challenges, Nick, is there a way that when you upload this presentation, maybe somehow we can reference the video links, maybe beside the video or somewhere within the parameters of that same site?
I don't really see a problem with that. We might even be able to run the videos. I think that's a question that Jenny would probably have to ask our IT person, but I don't see a problem. We should be able to do something with it.
Good.
But Stephanie, you made some really great points, and I wish I would have known about the coughing up the lungs a couple times. I could have probably used it.
Good, good.
And I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
I was going to say, these 3 books I put on my reading list. If you only read one of them, I would read the one on the left, The New Rules of Marketing and PR. That's great, and it's really comprehensive. It does share a little bit of what I just did with the long tail of the internet, and it helps you do some things. Guerrilla marketing is great because that's the innovative stuff. That's the getting out in front and figuring out how to trick everybody with your amazingness. I like that one too. And then marketing to the social web is really about using Facebook and Twitter, which I freely admit, those are things that we're all as a world still getting comfortable with. So that book is useful, but the things on the right are really incorporated pretty robustly in the first book. So I'd say that's your best bet.
Good, thank you. That's helpful. Well, Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to co-facilitate this session this evening. I knew it would be of extreme value in the content that you shared, so I found it incredibly helpful. I hope the rest of the participants, the attendees, did as well. So before we close, I'd like to, as I always do, just take a minute for any final comments from the group. So again, I would encourage you to use your hand icon, your raise hand icon, or the questions pane. So we'll give you just a couple of minutes to share any final thoughts, ask any final questions before we formally conclude the session for this evening. Nick, this one is, I think, for you. Is there an assigned PR person for the LSSU Charter Schools office?
Yes, there is. The gentleman's name is Tom Pink, and he is in charge of our PR department at the university.
Okay.
So if anyone wanted to get in touch with him or wanted to get some advice from him, they could email me, and I can send them in the right direction.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emery, do you have a question or a comment to share?
I want to know how soon is this article going to actually appear or come out?
Angie may know more than I do. I have been working on it. Let's see, it's always about 2 weeks away. And that's been something I've been hearing since last September.
Yeah.
They have been working on it for 18 months? 12 or 18 months.
I was going to say close to 2 years, so that's probably about right, Steph.
Wow.
Here's when I think it's going to come out. If you just want my working theory, there are 3 bad things happening for charters all at one time. One of them is that the Michigan Auditor General has done a review of the charter schools office inside MDE, and the whole point of their audit, according to Mark Eitram, was that they want to know why MDE isn't doing more oversight of authorizers in particular. So we think that there's going to be a bad hit there. The U.S. Inspector General has also done a report, has been to visit some folks, and I think there's a bad report coming out there, and I'm trying to remember the third one because it's even worse. But there's like a trifecta of stuff that's all coming out at once, and it's all going to be negative to charters. And I think that the Free Press story is the capstone or the lead off. Somewhere along the line, this is all going to happen in a coordinated way.
Yeah. Interesting. Steph, and I don't have any more updates. I've heard as much as you have, and 2 weeks. So I've been looking, for it every day to see if it's out there.
I did hear, and actually that's what I started to say, was that Mark told me that the Auditor General report wasn't going to be available until January, and that the Inspector General was going to be even farther behind. And so I have been expecting it. I was initially expecting it around now. I did hear another 2 weeks just yesterday. Somebody was telling me it was going to be another 2 weeks. So it could really be at any time. And so I know that some of my other clients have gotten ready with op-eds and letters and talking points and so forth. And so we're just hunkering down.
Nick, do you have any further insights? I know there was a council meeting last Thursday. Was anything discussed there about the timing of the article?
No, there really wasn't anything definitely discussed, but as you said, they've been saying it's going to be coming out for the next, within 2 weeks, and that's been going on for almost 2 years. I've been interviewed by various Detroit Free Press reporters, and somebody was saying that it's going to the editor's desk, and they're not satisfied with the material that's coming in front of them. That's why it's taking so long. They're sending reporters out to find more current information, as you had indicated. They were going back 5-10 years on things that have happened. So, you know as much as I know about it, but I think everybody should be prepared, one way or the other for something to come out. When we don't know, but I think you should be prepared with some type of a comment, or like I said, our PR person is going to be working on things. Also with references from some of our academies. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah.
The oh shoot, I had a thought. Never mind.
Okay. You lose it.
That
Okay.
a lot.
All
Not
right.
showing your age, is it?
Yeah. Right. Oh, we're both in trouble, Nick, if that's showing Stephanie's age.
Yeah, I know. Me more than you.
Oh, I know what my thought was. I know
See,
what it
there
was.
you go.
I just need a minute. So yeah, I am kind of a different school of thought, and maybe I shouldn't be, but the Detroit Free Press runs stories on lots and lots of topics every single day, and especially on Sunday, and it doesn't shake my world too much. And so I tend to believe that, number one, I think the fact that it is taking so long reveals that they don't have that much, and I think it's going to be, it might be a week, but I'm not as, freaked out about it, because number one, I think it's just not going to be as damaging. This is a 20-year-old set of schools that has really done well, and there are a lot of issues in traditional schools too, and so I guess I'm a little less freaked out. I do think it needs to be carefully thought through and responded appropriately, but I don't think it's going to end up decimating us. I really don't.
Yeah. Good. Good. I think at this point we're all probably more curious than anything.
Yeah. It's like
Well,
going out and like
I
Jimmy
think that's
Hoffa.
what we're curious to see, what kind of dirt they have actually dug up.
Right.
Going to be really appropriate to the cause. But
Yeah.
as you said, I think if we have those support groups out, those parents that see the positive in the charter school that their child's attending, I think that's what's going to overcome any of those critical comments that come out of the report.
Good. Yeah, very good. Well, I don't see any more hands up or any more questions to be asked. So again, I want to thank all of you for participating, and Nick, thank you again for allowing us to deliver this presentation this evening.
Well, thank you. And as I said at the beginning, if there's any topics that any of the participants would like to see additional webinars on, please email those to me, and we'll be happy to look into it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you
Good
again,
night.
Stephanie. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Stephanie.
Bye.